Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Peel, our production podcast going over everything related to, well, production for Team 5. I am Cabral. We've been having a lot of fun here on The Peel. Last time we went over audio design and sound engineering, talking with Doodle and Juan, both of our audio engineers. Covered a lot of stuff, had a lot of fun, but we have one more big last subject for The Peel we want to cover. And I have no one better to introduce that stuff than Spood. He's here too.
And that's me! Hello, I am Spood, and I'm happy to be a co-host on The Peel for the 6th episode. We are rounding out the stuff that we wanted to cover on The Peel, and today we only have one guest, but we have a huge part, one of the big, honestly I would say 4 minds of the creative vision of the project. We have got our head editor, Lightning Rabbit.
Yeah. Woo.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Delighted to have you. We're gonna do our best to stay professional and not be too limber and loose with it this time, but we go back a really long way, both of us, with Lightning.
It's been about, oh my gosh, about 13 years almost for me, I think.
Definitely too long, I think.
Yeah, definitely too long I've known you. And,
Yeah.
Spood, you're like, what, on that 12, 11-year mark with Lightning?
Yeah, around about. I mean, we met in 2013, so yeah, a little over 11 years.
And we met in 2011.
But that is besides the point. Hey, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you said, I'm Lightning Rabbit, and I'm the editor for Team 5. I mean, basically, I do all the editing for Team 5, except for the update videos, of course. So that encompasses, oh god, a lot of stuff. So it's not just obviously the assembling of all of the artwork and everything like that and timing it out. It's also going through all the audio, selecting takes from actors to use with both of you, doing all of the sort of visual effects and things like that. That's it in a nutshell, but obviously I'm sure we'll go into the sort of nitty-gritty of it going forward. But
I guess, I mean, you know, to elaborate on that a little bit, like, what is your background in editing? Do you have, like, any kind of formal education? Have you got any formal experience? Like, what brought you to editing Team 5?
Well, so what brought me to editing Team 5? I'll start with that one. That was Cabral.
It's my fault.
Because, So, I guess I always liked the idea of editing and working on films and stuff, and I went to university and got a degree in post-production. So I was familiar with how to edit, but I didn't end up getting a job doing editing. I got a job doing something else in TV. So I kind of didn't edit much for maybe it'd be like 6 years or so. And then you approached me and said, hey, do you remember a long time ago, Spood and I were writing a script for a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon thing? And I'm pretty sure I would have said no. But then you said, well, do you want to edit it for us? Because we want to try and actually finish it and make it. And I think I also said no to that as well initially, just because I was busy. But in the way that you do, you kept asking me until I said yes. And I basically thought, actually, it's not a bad thing to do because it'll rekindle a bit of my sort of interest in editing and it'll keep my skills sharp. So fine, yeah, what harm could that do? Because at the time, if you remember, you'd said to me, it's only going to be a limited, it'll be a run of 9 episodes, and each episode is going to have like a single frame per scene, maybe a couple.
Yeah.
So we're talking like, I don't know, like 10 frames for chapter 1, maybe 15 frames for chapter 2. And that very quickly grew legs into, how many shots does chapter 1 have now? It's like 250 or something, 270. So like, it's the scope of the project, for the better, I think, has grown massively from what it was originally. And I don't think I was anticipating that as the editor. I thought, oh, this will be an easy little, like, it'll be a small job, it won't be difficult. And
Yeah.
here we are now, like, what is it, a year and a half down the line, I'm
Something like
still
that.
editing it.
On top of that, not only because that's this recent iteration of Team 5, you've been technically, quote unquote, on Team 5 longer than that, because back in the original script, we had you on as a voice actor.
Oh, yeah. Now, I will say, I am not a voice actor, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you might have just cast me because I was British.
I believe that might have been the case. You're also my friend, too.
I had zero voice acting skill. You were just like, I want Flareon to be British. So, yeah, I was originally supposed to be Flareon. And in fact, I did reprise that role in the scratch audio for Chapter 1, I think.
We do have that.
Yeah, so when you asked me to be on the project and I said yes, with the caveat that I'd like to sit down with you and do a mock-up of what Chapter 1, Scene 1 would look like, so I can get an idea of what the show will visually look like. And we sat down and drew some admittedly pretty awful drawings of Flareon and Jolteon and Vaporeon, and we voiced the characters. So I did reprise that role, but no, I think Neville does a much better job of voice acting than I could ever do.
That's fair. I might have to agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how far back it goes, and it's really cool the level of, like, how how much you do, like Spood was saying earlier, you are absolutely one of the creative heads of this. Like, essentially Team 5's kind of run by 4 people, I'll say.
I was kind of thinking of it like the Mount Rushmore of Team 5 creative
it kind
vision,
of is, yeah.
I'm flattered that you think I belong on Mount
Mushmore is what we'll call it.
Mount Mushmore.
But
Yeah,
essentially, it is me and Spood spearheading. We did the writing, outlining, a lot of stuff, and then Paisley came in for artwork on the side. And then Lightning came in to fill the shoes, because I do editing as well, but I do that for work. And I wanted to separate myself from doing it here. And you already had experience with it and do it as well, in a professional setting also. So that's why we brought you on to do that. And you've also joined us for the creative, like, writing side, where you were one of the ones that sat down with us and, like, we hashed out the story to you, Paisley, and a couple other people, and needed editors to overview, proofread, and, like, double check, oh, how does this all sound? How does it look? How does it feel? And you joined for that process in whittling it down and making the story what it is.
Yeah, which was very kind of you to offer me to do that, because I am not a writer either, but, hopefully I offered something in the early stages of the writing amendments and stuff like that. But
notably, I mean, there is something that you brought to the script editing, and I'm sorry for cutting you off. I apologize.
No,
I'll let you finish your thought in a second. But you actually are coming at this from a background of basically no Pokemon knowledge whatsoever. I mean, I would say 90% of what you know about Pokemon now you learned in the course of making Team 5.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's a helpful perspective to bring to the script to make sure it all still reads, even if you don't have, like, all of that granular background knowledge to say, like, okay, that actually still stands up and makes sense as an independent story where you're following, characters doing actions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, and it is worth noting that I am probably... Is it fair to say I'm the only person on the project without a background in Pokemon? I wouldn't say without interest entirely, but I knew very little about it. I think I played, like, a Game Boy Color game, like, it might have been like Pokemon Red or something like that. I don't know, like, but I played it for like 5 minutes because it was someone else's Game Boy Color and I just borrowed it. That's, and this was back in, like, when would that have been, like 2003 or something like that? So a very little background with Pokemon, very little prior interest in it. So a lot of it was a learning experience for me, because people would be saying Pokemon names and I'd just be like, what is that? Is that a Pokemon? I don't know. So it's been quite interesting. You've seen my metamorphosis into understanding Pokemon, a bit more.
You're a beautiful Pokemon butterfly now. A beautifly even.
Yeah, you're like a Butterfree, you know?
Yeah, I know that
But
one.
yeah. But it looks like looking at the list of people helping us, Juan is not a Pokemon guy, doesn't know that stuff, and the other person would be
Paul, right?
who is it?
Paul?
Oh, Paul. Yeah, sorry, and Luke. Luke now knows
Okay,
Pokemon.
so I guess I'm
but
not the only one.
Luke did not. Yeah, so we actually have a like you can count them on your fingers the people who don't know Pokemon on this project.
Hmm.
But we still have
How many
some.
people do we have on the project in total, actually?
We're at around 36 as of the recording.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Mhm.
To go back to what you were saying a minute ago, I think editing is one of those weird things, because when you look at the Mount Mushmore of people who are on, the sort of senior leadership, you've got both of you, which is like directory, producery, that makes sense. That, that's the head of the project. Then you've got the head of the art department, again, makes a lot of sense. Editing is a weird thing because it's a department of one, effectively, and it's not really leadership in the same way. It's not like people managing and stuff like that, which some of the other departments are. But I think that kind of goes to show, not to sort of toot the editing horn too much, but that's how important a part of the project it is, if that makes sense. Because
Absolutely.
I remember being told when I was learning to edit that effectively the editor's eyes are the last pair of eyes that see the film, the TV series, whatever, before the audience does. So that's the last opportunity to pick up on quality assurance issues, the last opportunity to make creative changes, before it ships to the masses.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to kind of have a hand all the way through the project and try to be across both, like I said, the sort of technical side. And we can get into this a bit more in a bit, but there's a real confluence of technical and creative, a bit like in the audio podcast they were talking about the same thing, where it's not just about looking at the graphs and making sure that the levels are okay, it's also knowing creatively what works.
Mm-hmm. Because everything comes back to you. So despite, like, I'll sit down with the music guys or the audio guys, or we'll sit down with the actors, or whatever it is, right? Everything still comes back to you, like you're saying. So you're the final filter, you're the final pass. Like, hey, this looks off. Hey, this feels off. Can we adjust that, or whatever it is? So it is really important because, like you said, this is the final time to look at it before you throw it out to the public. And the editor is the one that has the technical and the creativity to watch something, to put it together and be like, we could do it this way, but there's this little part here. If we change these things, it'll flow better, because you're creating the flow of the story as you edit it together.
Yeah, that's right. As I say, it's almost like a puzzle, really. Everybody else is making the puzzle pieces, and then you have to fit them together in the final edit. So every finalized piece of artwork, audio, music, whatever, like you say, it all comes into the timeline and all has to be arranged in such a way to make it more than the sum of its parts. I guess that's not a bad way of describing editing in a nutshell.
It's a very good way to describe it. Has there been anything, by the way, that got you like into editing early on and stuff? And on top of that, I guess in tandem with that, have you ever worked on a project like Team 5 before?
I'd say it was probably YouTube stuff that got me into editing, because when I was growing up, and I imagine it would have been the same for both of you because you're the same age as me roughly, there were a lot of like gameplay YouTube type things, and you'd have like whole groups of people starting up YouTube studio type deals where they would have editors and camera operators and things, and I always thought, oh, that looks cool. It looks like a real sort of what's the word? it's very like rough and ready, and everybody's friends, and it
Yeah.
seems like a cool work environment. In reality, it's probably not as cool of a work environment as you'd think. It's fine when everything's fine, but it's not always fine. Whereas working for like larger companies and stuff is generally actually gives you better quality of work environment, I think. So I kind of luckily didn't go down that path, but I think that's what inspired me to start doing stuff like editing. And I have worked on other projects before, like Team 5. I won't. Basically, actually, one of the things that you said that I think clicked in my mind about working on Team 5 was you said it would be nice to be in charge of a project so that we actually have a vested interest in finishing it.
Yeah.
Because what you tend to find with a lot of projects online that are run by fans or amateur production studios, things like that, it's entirely dependent on people's will to finish the project, the organization to keep people motivated on the project, and the free time that people have to work on the project. And you tend to find that as people get older and they're not in school and have loads of hours free, that drops off. If the project organizers don't have a clear vision of what they want to achieve and how they're going to achieve it, and they don't set people to work operationally on doing things, then the project falters. And if you're not hiring people onto the project who are willing to give up their time for free, and they're not also invested in the story, then all of those things can lead to a project falling down. And I've been involved in multiple as editor where one or other of those things didn't align, and so the project never gets finished. And we've all, I think, been in situations where projects just don't get finished for that reason. And so I think we're all, at least at the top level, and I like to think that trickles down to everybody else on the project, we all really want to finish it just because it'd be nice to finish at least one project in our lives, you know, and not have it falter for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, honestly, I mean, that informs a lot of, like, our release philosophy. You know, I think a big part of why we want to wait until all 9 episodes are done to release